What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, ESPN decides to weigh in on the biggest fight in the sport of boxing that's currently coming up, that's on the horizon between undefeated, unified, now 3-belt holder, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer who is widely considered by many to be top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, in Errol "The Truth" Spence Jr., who is now 28 wins, no losses, no draw, 22 big wins by way of knockout. He is 32 years of age, 5'9", with a 72-inch arm reach, and undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning WBO World Boxing Organization welterweight world champion, and he is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence "Bud" Crawford, with a record of 38 wins, no losses, no draw, 29 big wins by way of knockout. He is 34 years of age, 5'8", with a 74-inch arm reach. With that said, boxing is not a mainstream sport here in the States. Boxing only comes up on mainstream sporting news and network casts when there's a mega fight. When there's not mega fights, you don't see boxing on these networks, particularly ESPN, okay? This whole buildup for this massive unification bout between Errol Spencer, former WBA welterweight world champion, Cuban star boxer Yordenis Ugas, who is now 27 wins, 5 losses, no draws, 12 wins by way of knockout. He himself was knocked out once now in his career. 35 years of age, 5'9", with a 73-inch arm reach as they updated it, okay? He and Errol Spence, they fought this past Saturday. It ended in a 10th round stoppage victory in favor of Errol Spence. ESPN, they mentioned nothing about it, okay? It wasn't plastered all over the place. It wasn't, a big thing for ESPN. It wasn't on daily to build up the fight. And you shouldn't have to be an ESPN or signed to legendary promoter Bob Arum, Top Rank CEO, and Top Rank to be promoted by ESPN. ESPN is considered the worldwide leader in sports. They delve into sports as a whole, okay? So you shouldn't have to be a fighter that's signed to Top Rank and ESPN for them to promote you. Now, I can understand on the telecast, when you have the telecast for fights, Oscar Valdez, who's the 2-division undefeated world champion Mexican superstar boxer, facing off against another 2-division undefeated world champion superstar boxer, Shakur Stevenson, that's coming up April 30th. Now, I understand you don't, because now it's Top Rank, right? So you're talking about more so Top Rank, including fighters that are not signed to their promotional company, and you don't want to give them light. But still in all, ESPN should want to promote it because ESPN is called the worldwide leader in sports. You understand? On a totality. They're not biased to any one fighter, okay? They're not obligated to one sport. They talk about golf, baseball, basketball, college football, college basketball, college baseball, women's college basketball, WNBA, women's NBA basketball. They talk about tennis. They talk about golf. They talk about all sports in its totality. But they leave out boxing. And so when boxing is being talked about on these platforms, it sounds so foreign. It sounds so far-fetched. It sounds so dare I say, amateurish. They don't know much about the sport of boxing. They're not well versed on the sport of boxing. So when they do talk about the sport of boxing, it sounds foreign, right? So now let's get to this. They're talking about Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, because it's the biggest fight in the sport of boxing, and they don't want to be left out. They can't be left out. They are the worldwide leader in sports. ESPN cannot be left out when you're dealing with the worldwide leader in sports, in the biggest fight in the sport of boxing currently this time. And so they delve into it, and you have Stephen A. Smith, and you have Kendrick Perkins. Kendrick Perkins is a former NBA player, former world champion in the NBA. And you have Stephen A. Smith, a colorful analyst that's not well versed in the sport of boxing. These guys are fans of the sport of boxing. Now, Kendrick Perkins is from Texas. So Kendrick Perkins clearly is siding with Errol Spence, as he should, because he's a Texas native and he's a fan of the sport of boxing, right? So he discussed Jamal and Jamal Charlo, and he hinted at a few things that you can tell he did his research on. He started talking about Stephen A. Smith was clearly siding with Terence Crawford. And they both agreed that Terence Crawford's face could be rearranged by Errol Spence Jr. in this fight because of the styles. But then Stephen A. Smith, he's talking about Terence Crawford, and he's saying that the way Terence Crawford completely dismantled two-time welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Showtime Shawn Porter, he didn't say that. Of course, he probably don't even know about that. So he didn't say that. But I'm telling you, two-time welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Showtime Shawn Porter. And he says that Terence Crawford easily dismantled him easier than Errol Spence dismantled Shawn Porter. And so when he said that, it brings me back to the amateur mindset that these guys have when it comes to the sport of boxing. ESPN needs to do their homework on the sport of boxing more before they bring up these topics. They should give them these topics 2 days before. They shouldn't have talked about this until tomorrow. Give them time to study. And so he didn't easily dismantle Shawn Porter. He did something nobody's ever done. He stopped Shawn Porter in the 10th round, dropping him twice. But he said that Shawn Porter was knocked out. Shawn Porter was not knocked out. He was stopped. His father, trainer, manager, Kenny Porter, saw enough and waved the white towel in the 10th round when Shawn Porter was dropped twice. But Shawn Porter was well conscious. He knew exactly where he was at. He was frustrated with himself. He was pounding the canvas because he let himself, get knocked down again. He let himself be in that position again. So he said he dismantled him. Then he said how he dismantled Kell Brook, and Errol Spence, he struggled with Kell Brook. Well, we know Kell Brook was 3.5 years removed from fighting at welterweight and hadn't had a big fight, a lucrative fight, a meaningful fight in that time, had moved up to 154, had both eye sockets broken, both orbital bones broken, and it came back down to welterweight, a weight that he said he could no longer make. That's the reason why he even lost to Errol Spence to begin with. And he wanted a rematch with Errol Spence at 154, where he's more comfortable. But he came down to 147 3.5 years later to challenge Terence Crawford at 147. Okay, so it's clear that he simply was not the same guy, okay, that Errol Spence fought for his first world title opportunity in the UK in front of 40 to 60,000 screaming fans for his first title opportunity when Kell Brook was still the champion. When he fought Terence Crawford in front of 0 fans, already suffering both those injuries, hadn't had a meaningful fight or been in a big fight, and came back down from 54. Now, again, people are going to say, well, Errol Spence didn't fight Kell Brook at 100% of himself, because Errol Spence fought a version that was just coming off of a broken orbital bone as well. Yeah, he did. 9 months later, he fought Kell Brook off the injury Kell Brook suffered when he dared to be great, jumping up from welterweight to middleweight to challenge then unified middleweight reigning world champion Gennady Triple G Golovkin, where he suffered a broken orbital bone, his left one. Absolutely correct. But to listen to them talk is very amateurish. And so they both agreed that once Kendrick Perkins started to tell Stephen A. Smith, he said, well, Shawn Porter wasn't the same guy. He was already retired, semi-retired, and being a commentator. So he wasn't really into the sport of boxing. No, I disagree with that as well. Now, Shawn Porter was into commentating, and he is, focusing on that lane. But to say Shawn Porter wasn't committed to the Terence Crawford fight is false. Shawn Porter was committed to the Terence Crawford fight. Everybody gets this from Kenny Porter saying that he wasn't committed in training camp. And so they tell you that Shawn Porter wasn't committed to the Terence Crawford fight, so he wasn't the same version of Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter fought a great fight against Terence Crawford. He couldn't sustain it. Terence Crawford made adjustments. Shawn Porter was getting sloppy, and Terence Crawford capitalized on him. We cannot take anything away from Shawn Porter at all whatsoever. Okay? He couldn't sustain it in Terence Crawford's style. Styles make fights. And the style of Terence Crawford allowed him to capitalize, create distance, and have success when Shawn Porter made the mistakes he made. Shawn Porter, I believe, fought his greatest fight against Errol Spence. I thought that was the absolute best version of Shawn Porter. But the version of Shawn Porter that Terence Crawford fought was just as good as the version. I think he was more well-versed, and I think he was more calculated than the version that fought Keith Thurman. I thought that Terence Crawford didn't get the version of Shawn Porter that Errol Spence fought, but he didn't get a drop-off version of Shawn Porter. I think that he got a version of Shawn Porter that was still better than the one that fought Danny Garcia. He was still better than the one that fought Yordenis Ugas, and he was still better than the one that fought Keith Thurman, in my opinion, because he was calculated with his attack. Yeah, it was controlled chaos on the part of Shawn Porter, and he was having a lot of success. But Terence Crawford's style and ability to switch from orthodox to southpaw, when he switched to southpaw, he started giving Terence Crawford all types of problems. His arms are longer than Errol Spence. He was pivoting on Shawn Porter when Shawn Porter was using Shawn Porter's aggression against him. He pivoted a few times to let Shawn Porter fall right into the turnbuckle. He pivoted, let Shawn Porter fall right into the ropes, right? And then he would go back on the attack, right? So Terence Crawford's styles make fights. His style is different than Errol Spence. Errol Spence wanted to prove a point, just standing right in the pocket with Shawn Porter. As many people were saying that Errol Spence has never faced somebody like Shawn Porter in that aggressive style and could push him every second, every minute, or every round. So he pushed, Errol Spence pushed to allow the fight with Shawn Porter at Shawn Porter's game, to beat him at his game, just like he did when he fought 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia, when he just chose to outbox Mikey Garcia. You understand? Instead of just blitzing Mikey Garcia and being aggressive like he just did recently with Yordenis Ugas, or like he did with Lamont Peterson, Kell Brook, or Chris Algieri. You didn't see that version of Errol Spence, not even the version that fought Shawn Porter against Mikey Garcia. So he chose to fight this way to prove a point. But it's a shame. My point in saying all of this is a shame that when we get the absolute pinnacle of the sport of boxing, the biggest fights, the Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford, it's no doubt this is the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. Now it's a subject of topic for ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports, when this should always be a subject of topic. Errol Spence versus Ugas should have been a subject of topic, not just Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. But this just goes to show you how they view the sport of boxing. And this is an issue that the boxers themselves need to handle, because if we get the best fighting the best more often, right, then it would ring the doorbell of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. You understand? It would get them to have to focus on the sport more often. But more often than not, we don't get the best fighting the best. And so now we get guys like Stephen A. Smith, who said that he wanted to see Tank Davis and Adrian Broner fight the Charlos, right? He don't know nothing about the sport of boxing. He doesn't know. He's a fan, right? So he's not well versed in the sport of boxing. But these guys are on the biggest sporting platform in the world. So you got Kendrick Perkins talking simply from a standpoint of being a Texas native, right? Saying that, you know, those Texas boys, we get in the ring and we prove our points, so on and so forth, as he should. He's representing Texas, right? And he's talking about the Charlos and Errol Spence, and he's right. But you can see that they're not well versed in this lane. And so then Stephen A. Smith, he had the Charlos on his platform and didn't even know what weight class they was in. You know, then they tell you how Canelo Alvarez is the bad boy and he's the best fighter in the world. They can't tell you nothing about Canelo Alvarez outside of a casual fan standpoint. Period. So they picked Stephen A. Smith started to, as Kendrick Perkins started to educate him on the things that he was talking about, he started to switch. He still said, I favor Terence Crawford, slightly more. But, initially he was saying that Terence Crawford going to stop Errol Spence and Terence Crawford knockouts. Yes, Terence Crawford's on a 9 knockout streak. But Kendrick Perkins corrected him, started to close the gap in his opinion on who was going to win the fight. And he started to say, well, yeah, you're right about that. You're right about right on live on air. Because they don't know, they know not what they speak of. So they said, well, Errol Spence is rearranging faces. Kendrick Perkins, he said, Terence Crawford is knocking people out, but Errol Spence is rearranging. Furniture is going to be moved when they step in the ring, and he's going to rearrange your face. And I agree. Errol Spence has, in his first title opportunity against Kell Brook, he broke his left orbital bone and got the stoppage in the 11th round. And against Yordenis Ugas, to be unified again, he stopped Yordenis Ugas in the 11th round. I mean, in the 10th round, broke his right orbital bone. And when he fought Shawn Porter, right, in a unification bout, he dropped Shawn Porter in the 10th round and clearly won the 11th and 12th round when people were saying it was a close fight. So Errol Spence, when it counts the most on the biggest stages, he shows up and he shows out. Period. Period. You think about it. He's got a knockdown in all his championship fights. Let that sink in. But I can't wait to see how this fight plays out. Can't wait to see it come to fruition. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share the videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.